What if your body already has a fat burner machine built into it, and you just never turned it on? The supplement aisle wants you to believe fat loss requires a proprietary blend, a fat burner in a shiny bottle, something with a patent number stamped on the label, and a price tag to match. But the truth is almost insulting in its simplicity. The most potent fat-burning compounds ever studied are not locked behind a paywall. They are sitting in your produce drawer, your spice rack, your pantry right now. Foods your ancestors ate for thousands of years before anyone ever coined the phrase metabolic booster or printed on a label. Today I'm handing you 20 of them. Foods with real clinical research behind them. Foods that instantly shift the way your body handles fat, hunger, and energy from the very first bite. Stay with me because number 9 on this list has been shown in clinical trials to cut next meal calorie intake by nearly half. And number 17 contains almost no calories at all yet fills your stomach more completely than almost anything else you could put on a plate. If you want more videos like this every single week connecting real nutrition science with foods you can find at any grocery store, hit that subscribe button right now before we start, because this channel exists to hand you information the diet industry would rather you never find. Let's get into it. Here are 20 fat-burning superfoods that kill fat instantly. Number 1. Green tea, the original metabolic ignition switch. Long before anyone ever measured metabolic rate in a lab, monks across Japan were drinking green tea to stay sharp through hours of meditation, and physicians across ancient China were prescribing it for digestion and vitality centuries before the scientific method even existed. It turns out they were unknowingly harnessing one of the most powerful fat-mobilizing beverages on the planet. Green tea contains caffeine, which activates your sympathetic nervous system and pushes your fat cells to release stored fat directly into your bloodstream as usable fuel. But the real engine sits in a catechin called EGCG. EGCG blocks the enzyme that normally breaks down norepinephrine, the chemical messenger responsible for telling fat cells to mobilize their stores. Less breakdown of norepinephrine means more of it circulating through your system, and more circulating norepinephrine means more fat being actively released to burn. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that subjects given green tea extract burned significantly more fat during both rest and exercise compared to those given placebo, and the researchers noted the effect held steady across multiple body types. Green tea also carries a modest but consistent effect on resting metabolic rate, the number of calories your body burns simply staying alive. Aim for 3 to 5 cups daily and add a splash of fresh lemon, since the vitamin C measurably boosts how much of the catechin in your body actually manages to absorb and use. If green tea isn't part of your morning routine yet, that changes today, starting with the very next cup you make. One more detail worth knowing. Brewing temperature actually matters here. Water that's too hot destroys a portion of the catechin content before it ever reaches your cup. So aim for water just below boiling, closer to 80 degrees Celsius, and let the leaves steep for a full 3 minutes rather than rushing it. Matcha, which uses a whole ground leaf instead of a steep bag, delivers an even more concentrated dose of EGCG per serving if you want to push the effect further. And unlike a stimulant-only approach, the caffeine in green tea arrives paired with an amino acid called L-theanine, which smooths out the energy curve and prevents the jittery crash that coffee alone can sometimes produce, making it genuinely sustainable to drink multiple cups across an entire day without disrupting sleep later that night. Number 2. Cayenne pepper, the spice that lights the furnace. Cayenne earns its spot through raw biochemical force rather than gentle influence. The compound responsible is capsaicin, the same molecule that makes your mouth burn when you bite into a hot pepper and reach for a glass of water. Capsaicin binds to TRPV1 receptors, part of your body's heat and pain sensing system. And when those receptors fire, your body responds by raising core temperature, increasing heart rate, and burning through calories faster in a process researchers call thermogenesis. Research has shown capsaicin supplementation can temporarily push metabolic rate up by as much as 5%, which sounds modest until you realize that effect compounds meal after meal, day after day, week after week. A study published in the journal Appetite found that participants who ate a capsaicin-containing appetizer consumed meaningfully fewer calories at the meal that followed, largely because capsaicin appears to blunt levels of ghrelin, the hormone directly responsible for hunger signals reaching your brain. There's also a secondary effect worth knowing. Regular capsaicin exposure appears to build a mild tolerance in some people. So rotating your heat source between cayenne, fresh chilies, and chili flakes keeps the metabolic response sharp rather than letting your body adapt around it. Stir a quarter teaspoon of cayenne into eggs, soups, or roasted vegetables. Your body starts responding within minutes of the first bite, long before the meal is even finished. If raw heat feels like too much too fast, Start smaller than you think you need to. Even a modest, barely noticeable amount of capsaicin has shown measurable thermogenic effects in research, so you don't need to torture your taste buds to get a real physiological response. Capsaicin supplements exist and are sometimes marketed for exactly this purpose, but whole chili peppers deliver the same compound alongside vitamin C, fiber, and antioxidants that a stripped-down capsule simply can't replicate. Building tolerance gradually over a few weeks, rather than diving straight into the hottest pepper you can find, tend to produce the most consistent, sustainable results without triggering digestive discomfort that can undermine the very benefits you're chasing in the first place. Number 3. Ginger, the root that resets your blood sugar. Ginger has been a staple of Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine for over 4,000 years, prescribed for everything from nausea to what old physicians simply called a sluggish constitution, a description that turns out to be remarkably accurate in modern metabolic terms. Ginger contains gingerols and shogales, bioactive compounds that improve insulin sensitivity and reduce chronic inflammation, two of the biggest hidden saboteurs of fat loss that rarely get discussed outside of clinical journals. A study published in the journal Metabolism found that men who consumed ginger powder with breakfast reported significantly greater feelings of fullness and a measurable increase in the thermic effect of their meal compared to a control group eating the identical breakfast without it. Here's why that connection matters more than it sounds. When blood sugar spikes and crashes throughout the day, ghrelin surges and cravings become almost impossible to reason with, no matter how much willpower you think you have. Ginger flattens that curve at the source, which means steadier energy, quieter hunger signals, and far fewer moments where you find yourself standing in front of an open pantry at 9 at night. Ginger also shows measurable anti-inflammatory activity in clinical settings, which compounds its blood sugar benefits over weeks of consistent use. Steep fresh ginger as a tea, grate it into stir-fries, or blend a thumb-sized piece into a morning smoothie. 1 to 2 grams daily is the range most of the supporting research points to. Fresh ginger tends to outperform the dried, powder version in most studies, likely because some of the more delicate gingerol compounds degrade during the drying process before they ever reach a spice jar. If you're new to ginger, start with a smaller amount, since larger doses can occasionally cause mild stomach upset in people who aren't used to it. Pairing ginger with a squeeze of lemon and a small amount of raw honey turns it into a genuinely pleasant daily tea rather than something you have to force down, which matters enormously for consistency, since the real benefit here comes from daily repetition over months, not from a single powerful dose eaten once and forgotten about. Number 4. Cinnamon, the dessert spice that fights sugar cravings. Here's the irony hiding in plain sight in your spice cabinet. The same spice sprinkled generously on sugary pastries is, in its raw and unsweetened form, one of the most effective blood sugar regulators found in any food on Earth. Cinnamon contains cinnamaldehyde, a compound that mimics insulin's action inside your body, helping cells absorb glucose more efficiently while slowing how fast carbohydrates get digested and dumped into your bloodstream after a meal. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics found that cinnamon supplementation significantly lowered fasting blood sugar in people already dealing with insulin resistance, with the effect becoming more pronounced the longer participants stayed consistent. And lowering insulin resistance is one of the single most important levers anyone carrying stubborn fat can pull, more impactful in many cases than counting another calorie. The practical beauty of cinnamon is that it genuinely tastes indulgent. It satisfies a sweet craving without a single gram of actual sugar attached to it, which makes it one of the easiest substitutions to build into an existing routine without feeling like a sacrifice. Stir half a teaspoon into oatmeal, coffee, or plain yogurt, and you get real flavor without the metabolic tax that sugar carries. And it takes seconds to add to almost anything you're already eating. One important distinction worth knowing: Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled true cinnamon, contains far less coumarin than the more common cassia cinnamon found in most grocery stores, and coumarin in large amounts can stress the liver over time. For occasional use, either type is fine, but if you're adding cinnamon daily as a long-term habit, seeking out Ceylon specifically is the safer choice. It costs slightly more, but a small jar lasts months at half a teaspoon per day, making the added cost genuinely negligible against the benefit it provides. Number 5. Apple cider vinegar, the ancient hunger regulator. Apple cider vinegar has been used as a folk remedy for digestion for centuries across multiple cultures, and modern research has now traced exactly why it consistently seems to work rather than dismissing it as old wives' tale. The active compound is acetic acid, which slows the rate your stomach empties and blunts the blood sugar spike that follows a carbohydrate-heavy meal, essentially buying your metabolism more time to respond properly. A study published in the Journal of Functional Foods found that participants who consumed vinegar alongside a starchy meal experienced significantly lower post-meal blood sugar and reported greater satiety in the hours that followed, compared to those who ate the identical meal without any vinegar at all. Lower blood sugar spikes mean lower insulin spikes, and lower insulin spikes mean your body is measurably less likely to shuttle those incoming calories straight into long-term fat storage. Some research also suggests acetic acid may modestly increase fat oxidation during light activity, though this effect is smaller and less consistent than its impact on blood sugar and appetite. Mix 1 to 2 tablespoons into a large glass of water and drink it about 15 minutes before your largest meal of the day. Never drink it straight, since the acidity can damage tooth enamel and irritate your throat with regular undiluted use. Look specifically for a bottle labeled raw and unfiltered, containing what's often called a mother, a cloudy web of beneficial bacteria and enzymes that get stripped out of the clear, filtered versions sold primarily for cleaning and cooking. If the taste is genuinely hard to tolerate even diluted, a splash of raw honey or a squeeze of lemon can soften the sharpness considerably without meaningfully diluting the acetic acid content that's actually doing the metabolic work. Consistency matters more than intensity here. A small daily dose sustained for months will outperform an aggressive amount taken sporadically for a week and then abandoned once the novelty wears off. Number 6. Turmeric, the golden anti-inflammatory. Turmeric has colored curries and healing tonics across South Asia for thousands of years, passed down through generations long before anyone could name its active compound, and curcumin is now one of the most studied anti-inflammatory molecules in all of nutritional science. Chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the most underappreciated drivers of stubborn fat retention, quietly disrupting the very hormones that regulate hunger and fat storage without producing any obvious symptoms you'd notice day to day. A study published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that curcumin supplementation significantly reduced markers of inflammation and improved insulin sensitivity in overweight adults over an 8-week period, with measurable changes showing up in blood work well before any visible changes appeared. Curcumin also appears to inhibit the formation of new fat tissue at a cellular level, an effect researchers refer to as adipogenesis suppression, essentially making it harder for your body to build new fat storage capacity in the first place. The catch is absorption. Curcumin alone is poorly absorbed by your gut, and much of it passes through unused. Always pair turmeric with a pinch of black pepper, which contains piperine and has been shown to boost curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. Turning a mostly wasted spice into a genuinely active one. Stir into eggs, soups, roasted vegetables, or a warm golden milk latte daily. Fat also plays a role in absorption alongside the black pepper, since curcumin is fat-soluble, meaning it's absorbed far more effectively when eaten alongside a source of healthy fat like olive oil or coconut milk, rather than on its own in a dry spice form. If you'd rather supplement directly, look for a product that specifically lists piperine or a black pepper extract on the label, since a curcumin supplement without an absorption enhancer largely passes through your system unused, making the price you paid for it essentially wasted. Whole, fresh turmeric root, when you can find it, carries an even higher curcumin concentration than the dried powder most people are used to buying. Number 7. Wild salmon, the omega-3 fat that burns fat. This is the food I promised you at the very start of this video. Salmon is loaded with EPA and DHA, 2 omega-3 fatty acids that do something almost paradoxical inside your body. They reduce chronic inflammation while simultaneously improving how efficiently your cells burn fat for fuel rather than storing it. A landmark study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that participants who added omega-3 rich fish to their diet for 3 weeks showed significantly increased fat oxidation during exercise compared to a control group eating an equivalent number of calories from other protein sources entirely. Omega-3s also improve leptin sensitivity, the hormone responsible for telling your brain that you have enough stored energy already and don't need to keep eating. When leptin signaling breaks down, which happens with chronically poor diets over time, your brain essentially stops hearing the fullness signal, no matter how much fat you're actually carrying, which explains why so many people stay hungry despite having ample energy reserves. Wild salmon 2 to 3 times per week helps restore that broken signal over a matter of weeks. Bake it with lemon and herbs, or flake leftover salmon cold over a salad the next day. The protein alone also carries a genuinely high thermic cost, meaning your body burns real, measurable calories simply digesting and processing it. Wild-caught salmon consistently carries a more favorable omega-3 profile than farm-raised salmon, which is often fed a diet heavier in omega-6 fats that can work against the very anti-inflammatory benefit you're trying to get. If fresh wild salmon isn't accessible or affordable where you live, canned wild salmon is a genuinely underrated substitute, delivering nearly identical omega-3 content at a fraction of the price, and it works perfectly folded into a salad or mixed with little Greek yogurt in place of mayonnaise for a quick, protein-dense lunch that takes almost no preparation time at all. Number 8. Whole eggs, the most complete fat loss food on the planet. A single egg costs pennies and delivers 6 grams of complete protein, containing all 9 essential amino acids, along with satiety signal that clinical research has repeatedly shown outperforms nearly every other breakfast food gram for gram and dollar for dollar. A landmark study published in the International Journal of Obesity found that overweight participants who ate 2 eggs for breakfast consumed significantly fewer calories at lunch and across the rest of the day, compared to those who ate a bagel containing the exact same number of calories at breakfast. That is not a small effect. It is a fundamentally different hormonal cascade set off by 2 very different breakfasts that look similar on paper. Eggs are also rich in choline, a nutrient your liver needs to properly transport fat out of liver tissue, and fatty liver is increasingly recognized in research as a hidden driver of insulin resistance that most people never think to address. Don't discard the yolk. It carries almost all the choline, the fat-soluble vitamins, and the dietary cholesterol your body actually uses to manufacture hormones that regulate body composition, including testosterone and estrogen. 2 to 3 whole eggs most mornings, scrambled or poached, remains one of the cheapest, most metabolically effective fat loss habits available to absolutely anyone regardless of budget. Cooking method matters less than most people assume. Whether you scramble, poach, or hard-boil them, the protein and choline content stay essentially intact. So choose whichever method you'll actually stick with consistently rather than chasing a marginal difference between preparations. Pasture-raised eggs tend to carry a slightly higher omega-3 content than conventional eggs, but if budget is a real constraint, a conventional egg still delivers the vast majority of the benefit described here, and consistency in eating eggs at all will always outweigh which specific type of egg happens to be sitting in your refrigerator. Number 9. Plain Greek yogurt, the protein engine your gut actually wants. This is a food I mentioned at the very start of this video. A single serving of plain Greek yogurt delivers 20 to 25 grams of protein, with a fraction of the sugar found in regular yogurt, making it one of the most efficient protein-to-calorie ratios of any food outside of meat itself. Protein carries the highest thermic effect of any macronutrient by a wide margin, meaning your body burns roughly 25 to 30% of its calories simply digesting and processing it, compared to only 6 to 8% for carbohydrates, and even less for dietary fat. A study published in Nutrition Journal found that a high-protein Greek yogurt snack reduced hunger ratings and next meal calorie intake by nearly 40% compared to a calorie-matched low-protein snack eaten at the same time of day. Protein also preserves lean muscle tissue during any period of active fat loss, and muscle tissue is metabolically expensive for your body to maintain, meaning more it translates directly into a higher resting metabolic rate around the clock, even while you sleep. Greek yogurt also delivers probiotic bacteria that support a healthier gut microbiome, which emerging research increasingly links to better regulation of hunger hormones. Top it with berries, cinnamon, or a spoon of nut butter, and make it your default go-to snack instead of reaching for something processed. Always check the label before buying, since many products marketed as Greek yogurt on grocery store shelves are loaded with added sugar that quietly cancels out much of the metabolic benefit you're trying to get from the protein in the first place. Plain, unsweetened Greek yogurt should list a little more than milk and live cultures on the ingredient panel. And if sweetness is something you genuinely want, adding your own fresh fruit or a drizzle of raw honey gives you full control over exactly how much sugar actually ends up in the bowl. Number 10. Grapefruit, the citrus with a real clinical track record. The grapefruit diet of the 1970s was widely mocked as a fad, but buried underneath the fad marketing was a genuine kernel of nutritional science that modern research has since gone on to confirm. A medium grapefruit contains roughly 52 calories while delivering substantial water content and fiber, a combination that produces real, lasting satiety for almost no caloric cost whatsoever. Beyond simple math, grapefruit contains a flavonoid called naringenin, shown in research to improve insulin sensitivity and reduce fat accumulation specifically in liver tissue, an organ most people never think about when they think about fat loss. A clinical study published in the Journal of Metabolism found that participants who ate half a grapefruit before each meal lost significantly more weight over 12 weeks than a control group, making absolutely no other dietary changes whatsoever during the same period. Eat half a grapefruit 15 to 20 minutes before a meal whenever possible. By the time your main course actually arrives at the table, The fiber has already begun expanding gently in your stomach, and the naringinin has already started shaping your body's insulin response before a single calorie of the main meal has even been eaten. One important caveat worth flagging here. Grapefruit can interact with certain medications, including some cholesterol and blood pressure drugs, by affecting how your liver processes them. If you take any prescription medication regularly, it's worth checking with pharmacists before making grapefruit a daily habit, simply to rule out an interaction rather than assuming it's automatically fine. For most people without that concern, grapefruit remains one of the easiest, most literal ways to eat your way into a smaller appetite before a meal even begins. Number 11. Coconut oil, the fat your liver burns instead of stores. Coconut oil is unusual among dietary fats because it's rich in medium-chain triglycerides, known as MCTs, which take a completely different metabolic path through your body than the long-chain fats found in most other cooking oils. Instead of getting routed into fat tissue for storage, MCTs travel directly to your liver, where they're rapidly converted into usable energy or into ketones, an alternative fuel source your body can burn efficiently even during periods of reduced carbohydrate intake. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that replacing long-chain fats with MCT-rich oils significantly increased daily energy expenditure and fat oxidation over a 4-week observation period, with the effect showing up consistently across participants. Coconut oil also has a genuinely satiating effect, likely because ketone production naturally suppresses appetite signaling in the brain. That said, moderation genuinely matters here, since coconut oil remains calorie-dense and high in saturated fat compared to the other foods on this list. 1 to 2 tablespoons daily, used for light cooking or blended into morning coffee, is the range most of the supporting research points to without tipping into unnecessary excess. Not all coconut oil is created equal here. Unrefined, virgin coconut oil retains a higher concentration of MCTs and beneficial compounds than the heavily refined, deodorized versions often sold purely for high-heat cooking. If you're specifically after metabolic benefit described in the research, virgin coconut oil in cooler applications, like blended into a smoothie or drizzled over roasted vegetables after cooking, preserves more of what makes it useful in the first place than repeatedly heating it to very high temperatures. Number 12. Chia seeds, the seed that expands inside your stomach. Chia seeds absorb up to 12 times their own weight in liquid, and when consumed with water, yogurt, or a smoothie, they physically swell into a thick gel that fills real space in your stomach and slows how quickly food moves through your digestive tract. This isn't a psychological trick or a placebo effect. It's a structural, mechanical influence on satiety that you can actually feel within minutes. The chia gel also blunts blood sugar absorption and triggers stretch receptors along your stomach wall that send genuine fullness signals directly to your brain, not just a vague sense of having eaten something. Beyond the mechanical effect, 2 tablespoons deliver nearly 10 grams of fiber along with a meaningful dose of omega-3 fatty acids that reduce inflammation throughout your entire body over time. A study published in Nutrition Research found that adding chia seeds to a meal significantly increased feelings of fullness and reduced measure hunger over the following 3 hours, compared to an identical meal eaten without them. Mix a tablespoon into a glass of water and let it sit for 15 minutes before drinking, or stir a spoonful directly into overnight oats or a bowl of yogurt the night before. One thing worth knowing before you start: always consume chia seed with adequate liquid rather than eating them dry straight from a bag, since the same expanding property that makes them so effective for satiety can theoretically cause discomfort if they begin absorbing liquid after swallowing rather than before. Building up slowly from a teaspoon to a full tablespoon over the course of a week or 2 also helps your digestive system adjust comfortably to the sudden increase in fiber intake without any bloating. Number 13. Lentils, the most underrated protein sitting in your pantry. Lentils rarely get celebrated on any list like this, yet they might be one of the single most efficient fat loss foods available to anyone at any income level, which is exactly why they deserve more attention than they get. 1 cooked cup delivers 18 grams of protein, 16 grams of fiber, and only around 230 calories, a ratio that is genuinely difficult to find replicated anywhere else in the plant kingdom. That combination of protein and fiber creates a dual satiety signal that outlasts either nutrient consumed entirely on its own by a significant margin. Research published in the journal Obesity Reviews found that regular legume consumption, including lentils specifically, was associated with significantly greater weight loss and reduced waist circumference, even without any explicit calorie restriction being imposed on participants during the study period. Lentils also carry one of the lowest glycemic indexes of any carbohydrate-containing food on Earth, releasing glucose slowly and steadily into your bloodstream rather than in the sharp spikes that reliably drive afternoon cravings. Batch cook a large pot once a week and build it into soups, curries, or simple grain bowls throughout the days that follow. The cost per serving is close to nothing, and the metabolic return is genuinely enormous relative to that cost. Red lentils cook the fastest of any variety and break down into a soft, almost creamy texture that works beautifully in soups and stews, while green and brown lentils hold their shape better, making them a better fit for grain bowls and salads where you want distinct texture rather than a puree. Unlike dried beans, lentils require no soaking at all, which removes the single biggest barrier that keeps most people from cooking legumes at home in the first place, and a full batch is genuinely ready to eat in under 25 minutes from a completely dry starting point. Number 14, black beans, the food that quiets cravings at the source. Most cravings aren't actually a failure of willpower the way we've been taught to believe. They're a direct symptom of blood sugar swinging wildly up and down throughout the day without your conscious awareness. Black beans are exceptionally good at preventing exactly that swing before it ever starts. A half-cup serving delivers roughly 8 grams of fiber and 8 grams of protein for only around 110 calories, a combination that dramatically slows how fast glucose enters your bloodstream following a meal that contains them. Research published in the Journal of the American Board of Family Medicine found that higher legume intake, including black beans specifically, was strongly associated with reduced abdominal obesity and meaningfully improved metabolic markers across a large, diverse sample of adults studied over time. The mechanism behind this is refreshingly straightforward once you understand it. Better blood sugar control means less insulin gets released, and less insulin release means less a hormonal push towards storing those incoming calories as fat rather than using them as energy. Add a half cup to salads, tacos, soups, or grain bowls daily and watch your afternoon cravings noticeably quiet down within just a matter of days. Canned black beans are every bit as effective as beans cooked from dry, so don't let lack of time or planning talk you out of adding them. Just rinse them thoroughly under running water, first to wash away a meaningful portion of the added sodium found in most canned varieties. If digestive discomfort has kept you away from beans in the past, introducing them gradually in smaller portions over a couple weeks allows your gut bacteria to adjust, and that early discomfort typically fades well before it becomes a real obstacle to sticking with a habit. Number 15, broccoli, maximum volume for almost no calories. Here's a number worth genuinely sitting with for a moment. 1 full pound of raw broccoli contains roughly 150 calories total, an amount most people could never physically finish in a single sitting no matter how hungry they arrived at the table. Broccoli is one of the most extreme examples of what researchers formally call volumetric eating, the principle that the physical weight and volume of food drives satiety largely independent of how many actual calories it contains. Your stomach has stretch receptors that fire genuine satiety signals when they're sufficiently activated, and broccoli activates them thoroughly for almost no caloric cost whatsoever compared to nearly any other food you could choose. Broccoli also contains sulforaphane, a sulfur compound released specifically when it's chopped or chewed, which have been studied extensively for its effects on inflammation and cellular health, with emerging research even suggesting it may influence how new fat cells develop and mature in the body. Roast it with olive oil until the edges caramelize and crisp, or steam it lightly and toss it into a grain bowl for texture and volume. The sheer volume effect alone makes it one of the most efficient fat loss foods that exists in any grocery store produce section. Overcooking broccoli significantly degrades both its sulforaphane content and its vitamin C, so steaming or roasting it just until bright green and tender, rather than boiling it into mush the way many people were raised eating it, preserves far more the actual benefit. Broccoli sprouts, the young seedling stage of the same plant, contain an even more concentrated dose of sulforaphane precursor than the mature vegetable, and a small handful added raw to a salad or sandwich is one of the most concentrated, low-effort ways to get more of the specific compound into your day. Number 16, spinach, the leafy green that slows fat digestion. 1 pound of raw spinach contains only about 100 calories total, an almost absurd volume to calorie ratio that few other foods can come close to matching. But spinach earns its place on this list for a more specific reason than sheer volume alone. It contains thylakoids, membrane structures inside plant cells that research has shown slow the digestion of fat as it moves through your small intestine. A study published in the journal Appetite found that thylakoid-rich spinach extracts significantly prolonged the release of satiety hormones GLP-1 and CCK, and participants in the study reported reduced cravings for both sweet and salty foods for hours afterward, well beyond the meal itself. Spinach is also one of the richest food sources of magnesium available anywhere, a mineral whose deficiency is closely tied in research to insulin resistance and disrupted sleep quality, both of which quietly sabotage fat loss efforts over time, without ever being noticed. Add a generous handful to every smoothie you make, wilt it directly into soups, or fold it into scrambled eggs. It disappears into almost any dish without meaningfully changing the flavor of the finished meal at all. Raw spinach does contain oxalates, compounds that can slightly reduce how much of its calcium and iron your body actually absorbs, but lightly cooking or steaming spinach breaks down a meaningful portion of those oxalates, making the nutrients considerably more bioavailable than eating it entirely raw. Frozen spinach is nutritionally comparable to fresh in most respects, since it's typically flash frozen at peak ripeness, and it's genuinely one of the most convenient ways to keep a steady supply on hand without worry about a fresh bag wilting in your refrigerator before you get around to using it. Number 17, cucumber, the food that fills you up for almost nothing. This is the food I mentioned back in the very opening of this video. A full cucumber contains barely 45 calories while being composed over 95% water, giving it one of the highest volume to calorie ratios of literally any food you can buy at a grocery store. Eating water-dense, high-fiber foods before a meal has been shown in research to meaningfully reduce total calorie intake at that meal, simply by taking up genuine physical space in your stomach before the higher calorie portion of your plate ever arrives in front of you. A study published in the journal Physiology and Behavior found that participants who ate a large low-calorie salad before their main course consumed significantly fewer total calories across the entire meal, compared to those who skipped the low-calorie starter altogether and went straight to the main dish. Cucumbers also deliver a meaningful dose of potassium, which helps counteract sodium in your system and reduce the water retention that can leave you looking and feeling puffier than your actual body fat percentage would ever suggest on its own. Slice a whole cucumber with a squeeze of lime and a pinch of chili before lunch and dinner as a simple daily habit. Leaving the skin on add a meaningful amount of extra fiber and a modest dose of vitamin K that gets lost if you peel it. So unless the skin is heavily waxed, which is common on some conventionally grown cucumbers, there's little reason to remove it. Because cucumbers are so water-dense, they also tend to spoil faster than sturdier vegetables. So buying smaller amounts more frequently rather than a large batch that sits in the refrigerator for a week keeps them crisp and genuinely appealing to reach for instead of forgotten in a drawer. Number 18, blueberries, the fruit that protects your metabolism. Blueberries are tiny, genuinely sweet, and remarkably calorie efficient at only about 85 calories per full cup, which makes them easy to eat generously without any real caloric consequence. What makes them stand out for fat loss specifically is their density of anthocyanins, the purple pigments responsible for their color, which research has shown improve insulin sensitivity directly in muscle tissue, meaning glucose gets used efficiently for energy rather than shuttled off into fat storage. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that obese adults with existing insulin resistance who consumed a blueberry smoothie daily for 6 weeks showed significantly improved insulin sensitivity compared to a control group given a calorie-matched placebo drink over the identical period. Blueberries also satisfy a genuine sweet craving at a caloric cost that barely registers on a daily tally, making them one of the easiest direct swaps for a cookie or a handful of candy when a craving hits hard. Eat a full cup plain, blend a handful into a morning smoothie, or freeze them for a naturally sweet dessert that costs you almost nothing metabolically at the end of a long day. Wild blueberries, smaller and more intensely colored than the cultivated variety, most commonly sold fresh, carry an even higher anthocyanin concentration according to several comparative analyses, and are often sold frozen at a lower price point than fresh cultivated berries, making frozen wild blueberries a genuinely smart default choice rather than a compromise. Pairing them with a source of protein, like a spoon of Greek yogurt, further slows the release of their natural sugars into your bloodstream, stretching the satiety benefit out even longer than eating them entirely on their own. Number 19, sweet potatoes, the carbohydrate that works with you instead of against you. Fat loss nutrition is too often framed as a forced choice between eating carbohydrates at all and actually losing fat, and that framing is simply wrong once you understand the underlying biology. The real choice was never whether to eat carbohydrates, it's which carbohydrates you choose to eat. Refined carbohydrates like white bread and pastries digest quickly, spike blood sugar sharply, and leave you hungry again within an hour or two at most. Sweet potatoes are the complete opposite. They digest slowly thanks to their fiber and resistant starch content, releasing glucose gradually into your bloodstream and keeping insulin levels stable for hours at a stretch. Research consistently links diets built around complex, whole food carbohydrates like sweet potatoes with lower body fat and meaningfully better metabolic markers, compared to diets built around refined carbohydrates at the exact same total calorie level. A medium sweet potato delivers around 100 calories and 4 grams of fiber, along with beta-carotene and potassium that support broader hormonal function throughout the body. Bake or roast them with cinnamon and a small drizzle of olive oil. This is a carbohydrate that genuinely belongs at the center of a fat loss plate, not banished to the sidelines out of fear. Interestingly, cooling a baked sweet potato after cooking and eating it cold or reheated, rather than piping hot straight from the oven, actually increases its resistant starch content through a process called starch retrogradation, giving you an even more favorable blood sugar response the second time around. This makes sweet potatoes an excellent food to batch cook in advance, since day-old, refrigerated sweet potato may genuinely offer a slightly better metabolic profile than one eaten fresh from the oven the very same night, which is a rare case where meal prepping ahead of time actually improves the food rather than simply preserving it. Number 20, almonds, the perfect portion that ends every craving. And here we are at the final food on this list, saved deliberately for last because it captures the entire philosophy behind everything you've just heard. What you eat determines how much you naturally end up eating, and hunger itself is a biological signal that food composition can manage far more effectively than raw willpower ever could on its own. A small handful of almonds runs about 160 calories, and yet research shows they're one of the most effective appetite management tools in all of human nutrition despite that calorie density. A landmark study published in the International Journal of Obesity found that participants who snacked on almonds consumed significantly fewer calories at their next meal and across the rest of the day, compared to a calorie-matched snack built from refined carbohydrates instead. Part of the explanation is genuinely mechanical rather than purely hormonal. The rigid cell wall structure inside almonds means a meaningful portion of their fat content never actually gets absorbed by your digestive system, passing through largely intact instead. The calories you eat from almonds are simply not the same as the calories you actually absorb from them. A small handful of 20 to 23 almonds mid-morning or mid-afternoon will reliably carry you to your next meal without a single craving derailing your day. Raw or dry roasted almonds are functionally interchangeable for this purpose, but almonds coated in oil, honey, or heavy seasoning blends can quietly add meaningful calories that offset some of the benefit. So check the label if you're buying flavor variety, rather than assuming plain and seasoned are nutritionally identical. Pre-portioning almonds into small containers or bags ahead of time also removes the temptation to mindlessly eat straight from a large bag, which is one of the easiest ways this genuinely beneficial food can quietly turn into overconsumption if you're not paying attention to portion size. If you made it all the way through this list, you now have a complete, science-backed toolkit for eating in a way that works with your biology instead of constantly fighting against it. Let's put the entire framework together in one place. Ignite your metabolism with green tea, cayenne pepper, and ginger. Stabilize your blood sugar and silence cravings at the source with cinnamon, apple cider vinegar, grapefruit, lentils, and black beans. Build lasting satiety with high-protein staples like eggs, Greek yogurt, wild salmon, and almonds. Expand your plate without ever expanding your waistline using broccoli, spinach, cucumber, and blueberries. And round everything out with a deeper metabolic support of turmeric, coconut oil, chia seeds, and sweet potatoes. This isn't a restrictive diet, and it was never meant to feel like one. It's a strategy, and every single food on this list is sitting on a shelf at your local grocery store right now waiting for you to actually use it. If this video changed the way you think about fat loss, smash that like button before you go anywhere else today. Drop a comment below and tell me which food on this list genuinely surprised you the most. Are you team green tea, team cucumber, or team sweet potato? I read every single comment, so don't be shy about it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and ring the bell so you never miss the next one, because the most powerful fat-burning tool you will ever find doesn't come in a bottle with a label on it. It comes on your plate 3 times a day, starting right now.